In a multi-strategy framework, you need sleeves that do different things. We've got our vol book for premium capture, our trend following for crisis alpha, and we've got dynamic risk parity, which is essentially our all-weather approach with a brain. Think of it as Bridgewater's all-weather approach meets a commodity trend following. Risk parity is the foundation that gives us exposure to every macro regime: growth, recession, inflation, deflation. The momentum overlay lets you adapt dynamically to any asset class that stops working. Right now, we're 57% in equities, 43% in inflation hedges like commodities and gold, and not in bonds at all. That's not a view. That's what the signals are saying. Here's how it works under the hood. Okay, so let's go over dynamic risk parity as a sleeve in a multi-strategy hedge fund and how this risk parity makes money. So essentially what you're combining is two things. Risk parity, which is equal risk contribution from asset classes. If gold is more volatile than the S&P, you'll allocate more to gold. Then there's a momentum overlay showing that asset classes that tend to move more in certain macro environments, we will boost those more than an equal risk parity approach. So to kind of see this, about 40 to 50% of our profits are just going to come from a diversified exposure of multiple different types of risk: term premium in bonds, equity risk premium in equities, long short equity, and momentum. Then we'll have a momentum overlay on top of that where assets that are going up, like gold in the last year, we'll put in more, and assets that don't yield much, like bonds, we're going to take out. We also mitigate drawdowns with smaller losses during crashes because we see the momentum of these trades. And we generally look at them at a 3, 6, and 12-month overlay. Then we have the alpha of just our selection of kind of what ETFs we're using or which allocation to asset classes we're using at the time. So what's traditional risk parity and where does it fail? So generally, you want equal amounts of contribution. If you have a 60-40 portfolio, the problem generally is 90% of your risk comes from stocks with a 60% allocation and 10% from bonds. So your volatility in the stocks are 15 to 20%, whereas your volatility in bonds may only be 5 to 10. That's 3 times more risk with stocks, which works great when stocks are going up, but that obviously doesn't work when stocks crash. The solution with dynamic risk parity here is you're kind of looking at each asset class to go 25% in stocks, 75% in bonds, and your actual allocation would be 50% of your risk from bonds and 50% of your risk from stocks. So here's a general formula to understand regular risk parity is the weight in your portfolio as a percentage times the expected volatility. You can look at a basis of slow, medium, fast, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, and then their correlation to one another. And essentially your goal is high volatility assets have a lower weight. If you were invested in commodities for debasement, maybe you have 4 times more gold as compared to the Bitcoins. And then here's a multi-asset approach where you look at US stocks, international stocks, bonds, commodities, and gold. You can see their raw weight and then their risk contribution is the same. Each asset has 25% of risk. So you need a crash scenario to get burned by everything. Why does this work theoretically? When stocks fall 20%, your portfolio falls 15%. Bonds barely help. They only offset 10% of the risk. You're not really diversified. And then when stocks fall 20%, that's 25% of your risk. In a risk parity portfolio, the other 75% is uncorrelated alphas, and therefore you get a smaller drawdown. Now, I want to go into risk premium harvesting. This is basically seeking different types of risk premium that are uncorrelated. And when we look at this, we can see that our equity risk premium, which is stocks, is 5 to 7%. Bond duration premium, the fact that 10 years and 30 years, we need to get paid more on than a no risk treasury and like a high yield savings account. Commodity risk premium from inflation, 2 to 4%. And then basically just inflation going up, not holding cash. We'll get that. It's diversified across all premiums. But here's the leverage question. Risk parity portfolios are bond heavy, and bonds have low expected returns. So the solution is to use leverage so we're not really giving up exposure. We can still get our 60% exposure in bonds, and we could use futures or return stack to have bonds. But this also cannot work because in 2022, bonds are more volatile than they have been in 20 years. And this obviously breaks through. And this is kind of Bridgewater's total alpha type strategy. So what we do is we add a momentum overlay to this, where static risk parity basically fails. Example, like I talked here in 2022, bonds crashed. They were correlated to stocks. Basically, it decoupled all of the assumptions for financial advisors over the past 40 years, and the correlation spiked to 0.6. and there's no escape and you're basically in. But here's where dynamic risk parity and having a trend overlay can help. When there's a positive trend, rising prices, you will keep increasing the allocation. Generally, we use 3, 6, 12 months. If all three are up, we would have a full weight. If the 3-month is below and the 6 and 12 month are above, we would have a medium weight. And then negative trend, you would potentially take it out completely if, here it is, 3, 6, 12 months is all below. Here's an example of just how we kind of go about weighting it. You could see here, example in bonds, a 3-month return was negative 5%, 6-month was negative 10, and 12-month was 15 in 2022, strong negative, not in bonds at all. This is where we're at currently. Then when you look at calculating this risk parity as a baseline, we'll take the current volatility for those rolling windows. Then we'll have the inverse of the volatility weight to have a signal. Here's just a baseline of an allocation that you may start with. Then when we apply the momentum overlay, if it's positive, we'll keep the baseline weight or increase it. If it's negative, we will reduce the weight, possibly not even holding it. You can see the adjustment here. Stocks are weakening. We would go to 13%. International is getting stronger. This was kind of 2025 early. We'll increase the weight. Emerging markets with mixed signals. Long-term bonds are deeply negative, so we got out of it. Commodity exposure up. Gold obviously up significantly. And then just from the residual exits, we'll sit in cash for some other stuff. And the other thing too here is we want to implement these strategies in a low cost. So like VU and Q, low cost ETFs, international developed markets and emerging markets. And then with all of these, we're basically able to allocate responsibly. Futures, obviously the most active one. I covered that in our last video. We'll link that below. And then we want to rebalance these quite often. Generally, we'll do it monthly. And we want to keep the last month out of sample to kind of prevent any whipshaws. Here's a current portfolio analysis of currently where we're sitting. We're mostly in developed markets, 33%, physical gold, 23%, commodities, 20%. And then we got the VUs, the NASDAQ, and emerging market as well. We have nothing in TLT. We have no fixed income because these are all negative at the moment. With equities, we're showing basically US stocks, which is S&P plus NASDAQ. It has a positive 3, 6, and 12-month rolling return. So we obviously want to allocate to this above the moving average. International developed markets, strong momentum in Europe and Japan. We're breaking out, overweight these as well. Emerging markets, China's kind of weakness, mostly due to kind of like NVIDIA stuff. And then inflation hedge with debasement. We're holding gold near all-time highs, strong momentum. Central bank buying, commodities also high as well. Nice roll yield in backwardation as well. So we've combined all these bonds, no allocation, basically because it's negative. This is dynamic risk parity in action. Then with regimes interpretation, growth plus inflation, great for equities, great for gold, great for commodities, not great for bonds. Bonds are generally a deflation play. So think about after great financial crisis, this is kind of where you want to be. In COVID, when we released rates to zero, this would be a traditional risk parity just based on historic volatility, 25% stocks, 50% bonds, 15% commodities, 10% gold. Right now, we're 56% stocks, no bonds, 19% commodity, 23% gold. And why does this work for commodities? Basically, we have different commodity choices, which we talked about in the last video, which would be passive indexes, roll yield, and then commodities index. But kind of what we're doing is we're looking at roll yield as the biggest factor. We want to avoid contango. We talked about this last time in examples of different weightings. We want to take into account inflation sensitivity and then that scarcity versus debasement indicator as well. Again, rebalancing this quarterly or monthly. When we look at kind of performance of ETFs like Hedger versus Bloomberg Commodity Index, you can see that it outperforms during these periods of time. And the other concept I want to go over here is alternative beta. So if you hold commodities, it's not necessarily an alpha, even though it's calculated as its outperformance over the S&P that's not correlated as alpha. It's more of a different way to extract a profit from the market that isn't directly correlated to the equities. And we just want to look at the regime where that does well. The best regime that commodities do well is basically inflation plus growth. With this dynamic risk parity, we're really optimizing commodities, which is the main value of what we get, but we're also able to get in and out of the general stock market to protect us. When we look at the risk parity premium, you have the momentum premium, you'll get drawdown mitigation, and then through ETF selection, minus your cost and fees is basically how you do it. The risk parity premium, which is just balancing out across assets, is about half of our return. You can see we have diversified return streams from that, and the diversification benefit of mixing multiple basically low sharp strategies together. An example I kind of give this, if you go back to 1970 and you allocate all your money to gold or all your money to bonds, it ends up having the same return regardless of which one you chose. But if you allocate it to gold and bonds, since they zigged exactly different times, it helps you compound more over time, and you would have done better by doing that. Then momentum, this is mainly drawdown mitigation. When we do this systematic, based on our research and papers put up our AQR, we believe this is 2 to 5% alpha a year. It does relate in high turnover, but since these are futures, they're already realized and they have the 60-40 long-term capital gains, short-term capital gains. And you can see that through trend following, we expect 5 to 10% over cash. And then by mixing it at responsible size, we expect 3 to 4% as well. Then drawdown mitigation, which obviously it adds value because we're not paying that volatility drag. 20% drawdown is 25% to return to get back to even. But the main benefit with drawdown here is mainly mental, that you don't have to see big red numbers. So if you lose 15%, you need 17.6% gain to get back to even. We want to avoid that as much as possible. From avoiding that, we think it's 1 to 2% alpha a year. And then basically our allocation selection to superior ETFs. So like QQQs has like a 0.2 expense ratio. If we go into VU, that'd be a little more responsible. Emerging markets like VWO versus EM is a cheaper contribution. And again, with the turnover of our portfolio, about everything gets traded twice a year. This is another 1 to 2% alpha. This is mainly mitigating the cost of doing it more than alpha, but I just want to show how you need to obsess over basically the manufacturing and efficiency of what you're trading. Then obviously trading costs, we do think that this drag is about 25 basis points a year just from basically getting into spreads and everything. And selection of the return breakdown, a hypothetical example you see here across stocks, emerging markets, bonds, commodities, and gold. When you're calculating the volatility, it'll basically show you what the expected returns are. Whereas when you have static risk parity, you would basically look at stocks, commodities, bonds, and never change this. Your bond allocation would be ripping you right now. Whereas when we apply some of these factors of the formula, we can see that we get alpha from allocating more to international stocks than US stocks. We get alpha from putting more in commodities and not putting it in bonds, as well as allocating more to gold. So you can see the benefits of all of that over time. And you can just see kind of with our back test here, we have close to zero equity beta with a volatility lower than the stock market. Not a crazy sharp ratio, but again, this is pretty nice, tax efficient, much lower drawdown with everything. Observations here, 2023, this back tested well. 2024, we did very good because everything's going up. And then 2025, by catching the gold and developed markets, it contributed a lot. We know that the correlations of these to kind of show more what dynamic risk parity does is these are the correlations of all of each other. Mixing these together will basically help that over time. And then when does this work and when does this not work? An example is a trending market, which is 2023 to 2024, commodities rallying in 2022, and basically gold from now, very strong performance. Regime changes, it'll also outperform just because we're exiting losers, which is getting out of bonds in 2022. Equity correlations change, more inflation risk. And then obviously inflationary environments, that brings down equities and we'll get in other stuff. The worst environments are going to be these choppy mean reverting markets. So, a little bit earlier this year in 2025 with basically the tariff stuff, really range bound, even markets. Let's kind of think of like 2015, 2016, and very low volatility equity melt ups. You're not going to be able to get 30% returns with risk parity, but we know that we're not going to take the drawdown. So we're fine with this over time. Also things like the flash crash or COVID or 9/11, you're never basically going to get out of. And these are kind of regimes that we expect the performance into. Equity bull markets, we should lag stock. Moderate growth, which is kind of a regular year in the S&P, to slightly better, we should do well. Inflationary growth, will murder it like 2022. Deflationary, kind of just missing out on the drawdowns. Stagflation, like the 70s and 80s, will do well. Equity bear markets, again, kind of neutral, not necessarily a risk, and will actually do the worst in whipsaw type markets. So this is just some guidance on what this looks. Replacements for a 60-40, pretty easy just using 3, 6, and 9 month correlations. Here's kind of an example of something that you guys may be able to implement at home, which would be, trend following with an ETF like DBMF, which is commodity trend following, and then a low vol kind of long short strategy of BTAL with, just regular allocation to gold, developed markets, and new markets. So I just wanted to give a little understanding around risk parity and basically what it can do. you're going to get a little more tax inefficiency with what you're doing. This is really good for like an IRA or 401k. I appreciate you guys from watching. And if you have any more questions on dynamic risk parity and kind of how to go about these things, I can obviously share this code. And I just want to give some insight on how we can allocate more intelligently, especially with markets at all-time highs. This could be a better, more mentally kind source of edge for you to put in the market. Appreciate it. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Like and subscribe.